developers do use tools like Cursor to validate what they're doing 10 times more efficiently than if you were doing it all manually. And AI tools can help you get through the mundane aspects of what you're doing and allow you to focus on the really creative aspects of the problem. All of the other stuff that I tend to do, like creating content for our presentation reports to investors, presentation decks, beautify your presentation, use AI like Midjourney to create the images, because I can create something which is unique and I can put that into my deck without worrying too much about copyright issues or anything like that.
Hello, everyone. A founder is a visionary, someone who transforms ideas into reality, overcomes challenges, and creates meaningful impacts. Through Founder Stories podcast, we bring you inspiring journey of the founders, the challenges, the breakthrough moments, and how they're using AI to innovate and grow. This podcast is brought to you by Aki AI, a multi-agent companion designed for founders and investors. Aki AI delivers specialized solutions that streamline the whole startup journey, making it simpler, faster, and more efficient. Do remember to check it out. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Founder Series podcast. Our guest for today is Osman Ahmed, co-founder and operating partner of Curium, a deep tech startup in Singapore, Angel Syndicate lead, and a startup mentor. And Osman is a very well-known figure in startup industry, community in Singapore. I'm very glad to have him in our show here. Osman?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really honored to be able to share some of my experiences here. Yeah, so I started my angel investing journey back in 2014 or 2013 with one of my previous employers before I joined Blue Jeans. So that's how I know Satya, is that we worked together at Blue Jeans. But prior to that, I was working for Telstra, which ran an accelerator program, and I accidentally became an angel investor through that particular program. And that kind of kick-started my entire interest in the whole startup ecosystem and the like. And one of my close friends here in Singapore was working on a deep tech startup. He exited that startup to Facebook back in must have been 2018 or 2019, and he come across a particular problem statement that I thought was really, really unique and interesting. And so we decided to, go into partnership together as co-founders on Curium.
Awesome. And along with Osman, I also have my co-host Rashmi. We have known him for some time. He's also a 2X founder of Bangalore Startups. Rashmi, welcome to the show. Great to have you back.
Thank you very much, Satya. Nice to be here again. And I Osman, nice to talk to you again. So let's get started on this.
All right, cool.
Good. So Osman, being a founder, how was the experience with Curium and how did it initially start? And why deep tech?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like how we got started, I'd known my co-founder since he moved to Singapore over 15 years ago. So I'd known him for a long time, and I'd been keeping tabs on his particular startup founder journey as well, because he finished his PhD at University of Singapore and then decided to set up his own startup in augmented reality, virtual reality technology. And that particular startup had a great exit. It exited out, and he was successful in that. And he was just looking for a new similar type of problem statement, like what's holding back a whole industry. And he'd come across a particular problem statement which gave him the idea behind Curium. And he happened to approach me because he only lived 3 streets down from where I live at the moment. So we were catching up, and he just said, look, I've got this particular problem statement. I think it's huge. I think it's going to really revolutionize certain aspects of an industry. And it's very much like how, SaaS software came about. You could become CRM provider doing one thing and one thing really well in a whole growing market, and you would become like a billion-dollar company. Look at Salesforce, look at ServiceNow, and they were doing that. Deep tech has got the similar type of profile as well, that you can pick a particular capability, a unique aspect, and it doesn't have to be like the entire thing end to end. It can be one component, but in a massive space, in a massive market, and you can really take over. Look at OpenAI. I mean, they've come out of nowhere, right? And all of those kind of things where they're not choosing to do everything. They're just choosing to do one thing really, really well, and it revolutionizes and cascades through to an entire raft of other industries further down the line. Curium started in 2020 during COVID.
COVID like throw a spanner into your plans?
It threw a spanner in, and it still continues to throw a spanner in the works. I mean, I think we've been living with the pain of COVID for, ever since 2020. And I remember sitting at home and not being able to talk to my co-founder who lived 3 streets down from me. It was all over video calls at the time, and it was just a bizarre way to set up a company. But again, the nature of setting up a company in Singapore is that you can do everything online. So we incorporated the company, we did all of those things. It was all done over the internet, and we had everything up and running. Even the team that we had built out were all like spoken to and worked together online. We were holding regular calls, one in the morning, one in the evening, all online. We didn't really need to do much in person. Obviously, with a deep tech, you're doing experimentation. And once we got the lab up and running and we were allowed to congregate in one place, it pretty much like changed the pace of what we were doing. And we increased the pace when we were starting to sit together and being able to experiment and run tests and things like that in person.
I think it would have delayed the time to market considerably because of COVID and remote work, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that. And when I mentioned, like, we're still living with the after effects of that, I think a lot of things have happened because of COVID and the way people behave and where people work and all of these kind of things. And we're still seeing the after effects of that. And we were looking to address autonomous vehicles. And at that time, autonomous vehicles were going to be the big thing. And it was the big hype. And then, along with a lot of other things during COVID, the market shifted, the sentiment shifted. People were not sure what the real trend was going to be. Are we going to move to autonomous vehicles? Do we have the capability to move to autonomous vehicles? And we're seeing the after effects of that. So that's impacted us as founders because we were looking to ride a very strong wave where we would enable a whole bunch of other things in that particular industry. And we've just seen like car companies like the Volkswagen that haven't shut down factories in Germany ever are beginning to do that. And I can't help but feel that that's partly down to a number of things that's happened during COVID. Even though no one will openly say it, I think there are the ripple effects of behavioral changes which have had an impact on solid industries like the German car market.
I mean, I totally understand. I think there is a term, right? Pre-COVID and post-COVID that has become a norm. What I understand, what I realize is that business is no longer the same. Starting up is no longer the same post-COVID or during the COVID era. There are few people who have adopted and have moved on, and there are few people who are still pulling back to the older days, and there is a lot of ongoing there, right? I think it's a new era. Like you said, it's like everything is everything underneath the feet is changing, and we are very new space.
Yeah, I mean the other thing that I wanted to draw out was like when I say that there have been impacts. I mean, if you looked before COVID, BC.
I like that.
I mean, it's like, 1 BC in countries like Pakistan, for example. I mean, there was a company called Airlift, and like Airlift was doing the whole like transportation segment, and they were really transforming it. There was loads of venture capital money being plowed into Pakistan. And then COVID happened, and they were like, hey, let's pivot. And they pivoted to groceries. Now, that to me isn't a pivot. That's like a whole different company, but they called it a pivot. And obviously, venture investors kind of gave up on that and said, this isn't working. We're not going to give you another round. And that's had that in itself, that one particular trigger event, I think has rippled across all of venture capital. And I still think of that as being the marked point where we suddenly started talking about funding winter. And it was because people were pulling out of frontier markets, emerging markets, because of these types of overinflated hype, and they wanted to go back to their basics. And luckily, where I'd been investing was very early on, very early stage, and therefore it didn't have a massive impact to what I was doing. But for those who were getting in at the A, B, C rounds, they were really having a hard time.
So, Osman, like, what stage is Curium now? Like, what is that you are looking forward in this era?
Yeah, so we're at Series A. I mean, just to give you a very brief outline of what we do, the problem statement that we arrived at was that what's holding back autonomous vehicles, what's holding back all of that um, big hype. Why don't we see autonomous vehicles now? I'm old enough to remember Michael Knight and Knight Rider, and you'd talk to your car and the car would come jumping through. It was fully autonomous, right? And we still don't have anything like that. I think even Siri has a problem with that. But we just don't have that. And why is that? And if you have a look at all of the systems now on the road today, the manufacturer will always say the driver has to remain in control of the vehicle. It's kind of a nonsense, right? Yeah, you can let it take over, but you have to pay attention. Well, that for me is like really stressful because you're kind of holding on to the steering wheel. You're not sure, should I take over now or should I not? And I just think it's a kind of a useless kind of approach to take, right? And the reason for that is because if you've ever flown a drone in as a hobbyist, you need to calibrate the drone. And while you're flying it, sometimes you'll get an alert on your DJI app to say, bring it back into landing. It needs to be recalibrated. And you have no idea why has that happened. Now try and put that into the perspective of a car with people in the car and pedestrians on the road and animals on the road. And everybody has been focusing on object and, perception analysis and hazard analysis. But what about the fundamentals of the actual sensor itself? It has a tendency to drift. We know that. We know sensors drift. And like even transformation models like AI, they drift over time too, as you need to retune them. And so this is a fundamental problem that nobody seems to take seriously. Or they do, they know it's a serious problem, but they don't want to address it. And well, why don't they want to address it? I think it's because it's a problem that's too hard to solve. And like literally when me and Ali went to present to a leading German automotive supplier, they were sniggering while we were doing the presentation, right? Because the experts in the room afterwards told us it's impossible. You can't fix this. This is not possible. Whatever you're saying, we don't believe it. And so I remember after that call saying to Ali, like, have we fundamentally like underestimated this problem, or are we able to do something that these guys aren't seeing? Anyway, we plowed ahead and we managed to get a few patents assigned as well to what we were doing. And we've now been proven that we can do this calibration capability in real time while the vehicle is in motion. So you don't need to take that vehicle back to a workshop, hold up these calibration boards and kind of wait for the calibration process to complete. You can just be driving along and we're able to constantly check every single sensor on that vehicle. And then when one starts to drift, we can bring it back into calibration, meaning it's completely safe at all times. Then all of the other cool stuff that you see on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram about, oh look, we spotted these people, and they look really good from a visual perspective, but we now know that they're accurate because we're pumping the right information into the perception models and the hazard analysis models. And so that's kind of where we've got to. And that was the problem that we were solving. The natural problem is now is that pretty much all of the people that we were talking to, either they've been retrenched, moved to different roles, or some of these leading German players have just said, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do autonomous vehicles. We're going to park it for another 10 years because we don't think that's where the market's moving. So we were addressing a problem for a market that would be growing and is no longer growing. So as a typical founder, you have to then work out, well, what do you do? Do we pivot? Do we shut up and go home? We've just persevered. We've persevered with the technology that we're doing, and we've also pivoted into smart cities where we have immediate requirements that are there using the LiDAR technology that we're familiar with. And this is the nature of startups. You don't know where you're going to end up. And we've ended up doing a number of important like landmark deals with train station operators and retailers where we can track and monitor people in perfect complete privacy using the LiDAR sensors for tracking and monitoring where they're going. Yeah, and we've had to do that. We couldn't just rely on one industry. Now, in an ideal scenario, we would address the autonomous vehicle stuff, get that running, and then you say, this is our, in your, what do you call it, your BCG matrix or something. This is our cash cow. And then we'll try and like find a rising star and let's go into that. We've had to really just shortcut a number of things and go straight into let's get a second product out here. We can't be a one-hit wonder, and that's the nature of being a founder. You have to just keep on moving forward.
Yeah, true, absolutely. So, right, also, like, this is interesting. So now, like with that, has AI helped you a bit, in any way? This AI search and these AI technologies.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you want to look. If I was to like, I don't deal with our developers every day. They'll tell you that. Like, and nearly everybody in the team is a developer apart from me, so you can imagine, right? But they do use tools like Cursor. They do use tools like Copilot to really just enhance what they're doing, validate what they're doing, and you're getting, executable code, 10 times more efficiently than if you were doing it all manually. And I think that's the general consensus with AI tools at the moment is that they just speed things up. And they can help you get through the mundane aspects of what you're doing and allow you to focus on the really creative aspects of the problem. The actual let me think about the problem. Let me work out what we might need to do. Let me do some experiments. Now let me code. And it's that whole element of doing the automations, doing the coding, doing the cleaning up of the code. You can leave that to AI to do, or even just building out your boilerplate template and then using that. You're able to use AI tools to do that. I don't code. Well, I could code if I was really forced to, but I choose not to. All of the other stuff that I tend to do, like creating content for our presentation reports to investors, presentation decks. I'm constantly scouring the internet for new tools to help me do that, such as beautify your presentation. Use AI to do that. All the way through to using things like Midjourney to create the images, because the amount of times I've like ripped off pictures from the internet and hope that no one gets into trouble for doing that. Can't do that anymore, and using Midjourney just means I can create something which is unique but gets the image across, and I can put that into my deck without worrying too much about copyright issues or anything like that.
Awesome. I think I agree with you. I mean, I was a programmer like back in 2004, 2005. Gave up programming since 2011, moved to the product side of things. And only recently in 2024, I mean, this month itself, I started playing around with AI tools and I'm back into programming. I mean, it's really, really good. I could build a complete app, a complete product out within a week. And it would have not been possible if I had hired even the best developer out there. right? So I think AI is amazing. It is opening up a lot of things, like you said, Cursor, your team is doing it. And you also mentioned about Midjourney. One other thing I wanted to check on you, Ushman, is like, I know you are an angel investor as well. And as a part of investment, do you use anything in the AI, any AI tools for that?
Specifically, not really for like analyzing a company, but what I do in ChatGPT, I do say, tell me more about this company and tell me more about this founder. And it will just go and find out all that information and give me stuff. Now, I'm not relying on it 100%, but it's a great way to start to kind of then go, oh, okay, well, it's found this information. It's found this information about the founder. Now let me go and have a look to see where the references are. And it's a knack, right? You know, a bit like when Google first came out, I had like a sheet telling me like, okay, well if you query it with this and you query it that way, you'll get these types of curated results. And same goes for ChatGPT. You can then say, okay, well, give me the references for that. Where did you get that information from? And then it will churn out the links to where it got the information from, and then you can then go independently, go and research that. But it's a great way to start in terms of being able to do the early stage, background checks on some of the stuff. Now, most of the angel investing that I'm doing are really in very early stage, so there won't be things like a real detailed financial breakdown or a financial report or anything like that from the company, because they're just about making money, if that. And so you can't really do analysis with that. But I can see a perfect use case where you can take the annual report and throw it in and say, give me some concerns that you have with this particular financial report, and it could pull that out. The capabilities are there. I've got one friend who really has gone deep into this, and he seems to be coming across new tools all the time that help him on so many different things. One of the startups that we invested in as well before AI was the thing was using the GPT transformer models to be able to modify your copyright for advertisements so that you could have an ad for Twitter, and then that we would take that and create like content for Instagram and for TikTok and do all of that in one go. I mean, as an angel investor though, as soon as I see a pitch deck and it's got AI driven something, I'm just checking to see are they doing API calls to GPT or not, right? Or are they doing something a bit more clever than that? So there's a lot of hype around it as well, and yeah, and people are jumping on that. Even at Curium, we do AI, but we tend not to mention it too much because then we'd be seen as these guys jumping on the ChatGPT bandwagon again. But we do have our own, because one of the things that we do, we're pulling a lot of sensor data, like huge amounts of data. And in the smart city space, let's say we've got sensors up in a train station, we've got one in Europe, and imagine you can put that into a dashboard. And me and Satya, we used to work on our Blue Jeans dashboard, and we would look through that, and then we would look through our own internal dashboards as well, and we would try and make sense of the data. Um, and the dashboard will tell you what somebody thinks you might be interested in,
Yeah.
right? But I'm not, 9 times out of 10, I'm not really interested in what somebody else has curated for me into a dashboard. And with the type of smart cities information that we're doing in a train station, imagine I'm looking at that and I can see the statistics. 20 people went here, 77%, went to platform 3, and great. Well, what does that tell me? But with the ChatGPT module that we've done, with the internal ChatGPT that we've created, you can query the data really, really quickly. And that's where I see this is really transforming the way we interact with computers, interact with the data. You can create terabytes of data and query it using natural language and pull out information in natural language. You don't need to interpret it anymore. Let the computing power do it for you. How many people went to platform 3 between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m.? Done. and it will tell you there were 15 people. Do we know how many of those went to the supermarket on the first floor? And it will give you a subset of that. And you can do this in real time with real-time data as well because of the way the models are built out. I just think all of these are just changing the way human-computer interaction is defined. No longer is it, here's a web page and you have to query it and slice and dice the data and pull it out. No longer do you need to be an expert in SQL. You can just ask it what you want and it will tell you. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think as product managers, I remember back in my days in Uber, I used to write queries, SQL queries, run it by the engineer, see that it is right, and then run it on the dashboard. There are so many tools that you can run off. And then sometimes the data is there, sometimes your query is wrong. It actually took a long time to get any data out or insights out. I would not say data there, the insights used to be taking time. And like you mentioned, now you can do it using natural language, and you don't need to really know to high level of any level of, in fact, SQL querying. That's an amazing area. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, just the time taken to acquire the data and then sanitize the data and then present it into a format that you think you would be able to understand, and then try to extract the information from it, like the insights from it. That was like a really long, painful process. And how many being a Tableau specialist, right?
Yep.
And
right.
Business, I think it was called Business Analyst, Tableau, and there were a few other tools, business intelligence software. I mean, right? Data lakes, data transformation tools. But I think data transformation is another, I think, casualty case in case of AI. Data in any shape and form, it will transform that into the form that you want to store it, let's say.
Yeah.
And AI is doing that. I mean, so many interesting use cases. I think these are all enterprise AI use cases. I have not come across or used them directly yet, but I have been hearing about them a lot. Good to hear that you're already using some of them for your sensor data.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is it. When you're generating terabytes of data, trying to make sense of it, I think is like really absolutely key, because it's a bit like having, without the ability to pull the insights out, you've effectively got a tank with a very stupid driver. And what use is a tank with a stupid driver? It's gonna get stuck. And that's where we are with data at the moment. We have data and loads of it, and we're just weighed down by it all.
Yep.
And the GPT capability can extract all of that.
Yeah, that's a whole new level. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So Asman, like you have interacted with a lot of tools as an angel investor and now. What do you think would be a wish list for in this age of AI? Something that could really help you do your job. What do you think is missing today and you would like to have it?
I mean, I think for me, there are personal things which I'm trying to do. Like, for example, when I did my MBA many years ago, one of the really interesting things that I really loved doing was doing the whole analyst review of a particular company, pull out their 5 years of financial reports, and then start to plug it into a spreadsheet. And from that, I would then, with my own level of interpretation, say, well, this share price is following the dividend growth model. And from that, I expect that the share price will get to X amount. And I found that fascinating. But what really put me off was just the amount of data input and data transformation I needed to do, taking it from a PDF or an online document to being able to punch it into a spreadsheet. And what I feel now I need to be able to do is say, here's the spreadsheet, ChatGPT. These are the data points that I want. Can you look at the last 3 years of the financial reports and start to input this data into the spreadsheet? I'm pretty certain it can be done. I just need to work out how. And but they're the type of things, and there's so many new tools coming out. I'm sure somebody's already done it. That's the thing. I don't want to really start on this particular journey only to find out somebody's done it 15 times better than what I could have done. But yeah, they're the type of things which I think will really transform that, because as much as I'm an angel investor, I also have an interest in bonds and stocks and, gold price and silver price and things like that. And being able to just consolidate that into some of the spreadsheets that I already have lying around. And I'm sure I don't even need a spreadsheet anymore. I'm sure I could just say, hey, could you just create like a HTML page that summarizes all this data for me? And then I could just upload it into a blog or something like that.
Investment thesis.
You just hit the nail on the head right there. So I think as founders, we all often come across and with this, I'm pretty sure there is something out there and I'm not using it yet. I'm not leveraging it yet. I want to leverage more and improve my productivity more and more as founders, right? And I'm pretty sure and the other part, right? There are so many menial tasks in our mind that, hey, this can be automated. And why do I have to do this in 2024, 2025? Manual, in copy paste or to do this query? Can someone not doing it already? And I think every day, me and Satya, we go on a call just to discuss this. Is this thing already done? Like, can we find some tool already doing this? Not just the analysis or the research part, but also the automation of it, right? So the other day I was talking about, hey, there are so many automations possible. Like, this is a no-brainer. I mean, this should already be done. Why are people not doing it already, right? And that's, I think we're curious. And one of the reasons we started this podcast is essentially to discover that. I'm pretty sure we'll be using some tools that we haven't heard of and this way, right? And then we'll say, let's try it out. That's
I mean, the one thing I haven't really checked is the normal regular tools that I think some of us are using, like Zapier and if this, then that. And I'm sure if I went back there now, they've probably got something in there where it utilizes AI so that no longer do you need to just drag and drop and like try and create the rules. You can just say, hey, I want to do this, and it will just like create the workflow for you. I'd be surprised if they haven't done it, because this is the type of thing that people are expecting now. For these companies like Zapier and if this and that to remain relevant, they're going to have to, I think, adopt these types of tools into their interface.
Makes sense. I think they're already doing it. Some of the tools, because I think Satya was experimenting and some of the tools there, and he was saying, hey, this is on AI, that is on AI. It is so easy to get lost in this AI world today.
I mean, I'm a Star Trek fan, and like, for me, the pinnacle was being able to say, hey, computer, can you do this, analyze this? And it would just like do it for you, right? And I've got a few Google automations at home where the air conditioning can be turned on and off with voice command and everything. I feel like I'm living in the future that I dreamed of just because I can get it to turn lights on and off. But I'm pretty certain that somebody's got an AI or AI equivalent where you can just say, well, I've got these tools and this kind of system. They're not currently integrated. Can you show me how I can integrate them in? And it will tell you. And then you go, okay, go ahead and do it. And it would do it. That would be really good.
So this was the exact same feeling I had when I tried out the coding tools Cursor and Bolt Neo. Exact same feeling. I just told them in English language, hey, I want to build a SaaS application on AI using Superbase as the database. Can you build me a boilerplate canvas with the login page and 3 other pages? And it wrote thousands of lines of code in front of me, and it gave me a link. I clicked on it, it worked. So imagine I would have spent probably 3 days trying to set that thing in interrupt. So I didn't do any installations, software installations. Like today, if you are trying to develop an app, you have to do, oh, this is a dependency, that is a dependency, install this, install that. You have to bring that in. That was one of the reasons why I actually moved away from programming. But here, I did it on a browser board. It actually gave me that. And I was blown away. Like, wow, that was the magical feeling. I can imagine that if I can have that feeling in building codes, that same feeling could be there in other areas in our life as well, right? It has to be only in one area. And I think the more we talk to more people, I'll see about more and more things that is coming in here. Amazing.
Sometime back, Rashmi and we were talking about the use case that you just mentioned about I have these tools and I have these automations. Would you make it work? And that the world is coming to know as agentic AI. That means you not only tell me what are the options that are available, but go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Don't wait for me. So, and this world is moving to the Gen AI has moved to agentic and multi-agent AI, which not only understand your intent, but also go and automate the stuff for you so that you spend the time that is required on the jobs that we were doing. And
Yeah.
that your dream is something coming into reality. So,
Yeah. I mean, I still remember the first time I got a Google Home device and I showed the automations that I'd done with to my colleagues, and all of them rushed out and went and bought a Google Home device just so that they could get their kids to do it for them, right? Like, okay, my colleague's done it already, but you need to do it. So they went out and did that. Now, all I did was just record like a capability where you just say, "Hey, I'm home," and then TV would come on and the lights would come on, the fan would start going and the air conditioning would turn on and it would say, "Welcome home." And they'd be like, "Hey, cool." And then I'm leaving and then all of the things would be shut down. And I played that video to a few colleagues at work at Telstra and they were like, "Right, I'm going to get one now." And they went out and uh, bought the Google Home device. What they didn't realize was that, yeah, you needed to then go into the Google Assistant and create the scenes and then test each scene to make sure it works.
Yeah.
And that in itself is an element of frustration. And but yeah, and once it's working, you just don't want to touch it again. You're like, don't screw it up.
yeah.
We have all been there when we have all been there.
Yeah.
So, on a side note, so you are investing, angel investing. So, what kind of AI deals or AI companies are you expecting, or you are looking to invest these days? Then,
I mean, I've had a bit of AI fatigue.
or,
Because
or let's put it: what are the AI companies you have invested in? What kind of AI companies you have invested in?
So there's one from Bangladesh, and I wouldn't call it AI, but they were using, like I mentioned, there was a marketing company, and they were using the technology to simplify the copyright text into different platforms. And I thought that was really cool. But this is, before AI was even a thing, like ChatGPT hadn't hit the mainstream yet at that time. And so it was really quite innovative that you could like say I'm going to do this and these are the different social media platforms I'm using, and it would just automate the content for the different formats automatically. These guys were ahead of the game. And they're from Bangladesh. You wouldn't think it, right? And when you look at their website, you think it could be just another regular Silicon Valley startup, right? And to the point where, like, I think 80% of their revenues come from North America.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's me.
So,
That's
yeah, like the founder, she's amazing. And I'm emphasizing the she because this is the other thing that we overlook quite often is the power of a female founder. And yeah, her and her co-founder, they're both extremely talented individuals. But yeah, we often overlook that component, right? The female founder, and also, it's no longer relevant to be saying that, hey, I'm in the valley and therefore I'm amazing. There is this bias that, oh, well, if you're from Google, you must be good. In actual fact, the amount of mediocre people I've met from those large tech companies, and it's because they weren't mediocre to begin with. It's just that you become complacent over time, right? And you say, "Hey, I'm amongst the best. I am the best," and you kind of take your eye off the ball over time, and then you become very fragile. Then when you leave those companies and go somewhere else, you really struggle because the capability that you need to stand on your own 2 feet is no longer there.
I understand totally. I understand totally that what you're saying there. I
Yeah.
have come across those people. I have been one of those people also at times.
I know. I mean, this is it. I mean, I came from telco, and at that time, telco was like this was before Google. So if you were in telco, you were part of that .com boom, and so yeah, we all become complacent because we just think, well, we know everything, and it absolutely killed me when Blue Jeans got acquired by Verizon. I was back in an industry where everybody was telling you how amazing they were. And having come from outside back in, you just think, no, you're not. And I don't want to offend you by telling you that either.
I totally get it, man. I totally get it. Cool.
Completely understand. So also, like, I understand, like, you have been saying that for quite some time. Like, what are the things that you don't like about this AI thing that is there? Like, apart from the buzzword that you were mentioning, but what are the things that you think that AI should be improved or be better?
Look, I think we're still trying to find out what it really can do for us and what the limitations are. I think it's still at that stage where, the Gartner cycle, you have like your peak of inflated expectations and then the trough of disillusionment. I still think we're there at that peak of inflated expectations, and we're going to have this moment where it doesn't solve all the problems, and if anything, it creates new ones. And so you're going to find people who are really anti-AI are going to point out that, yeah, it can't do all of the things that you wanted it to do, and that's either a great thing or not. We still have to be open to the fact that there are going to be a whole range of things that we need to be aware of about the limitations, what it can and can't do, what the real concerns need to be. If I'm pulling information out about Satya, for example, from an AI tool, how do I know that that data is actually accurate and it's not just hallucinated a whole bunch of stuff for me? Because it knows that I like to dig the dirt on people, so it's giving me dirt, whether it's real or not. That's a particular risk, right? So I think we're still in that stage, and that's what really concerns me about it. The upside is that even though there are people talking about how this is like going to completely destroy entire industries, I think it's going to create whole new industries as well. So just like when the dot-com boom came in and people were saying, hang on, what about the travel agents? These shops on the street that have got these people who would get your visa and book your holiday for you and all that kind of stuff. What are they going to do if we all book it online? Well, there are whole other industries that have opened up around that, and people have just moved into those. When I graduated a long, long, long time ago, I mean, one of the new jobs out there was to be a webmaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be a webmaster when I grow up, no one said. But, those types of things, the industries change, industries evolve, and new tools come in, and it means that people have to move up the food chain. I mean, I thought I was a programmer because I could handle the VHS, timer on my video recorder, and that in its own sense is like a simple, basic kind of programming language, right? But yeah, no one thought of things like a webmaster as being a job that existed back in the 1990s. It no longer is a job anymore, but there are people who do manage content online, and that is what a webmaster used to do.
Yep. Yeah.
Call it something else.
Yep.
Absolutely right. That's something that's a really good point that you have made, that there will be new industries and new use cases that are going to come up. And that's the reason of this podcast, is to understand where the areas of impact that we can make. And that is something which we are also trying to help. Like, once we know all these areas of impact, I think that's where the solutions can be derived and probably better use cases can be resolved.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like one of the startups that I was speaking to at a demo day from Tenity, and I forget what they were specifically doing, but it was something along the lines of the transformer models that they were using, or that people use to create, the kind of pseudo database that everything can be queried from. That needs to be fine-tuned all the time, because if you don't do anything with it after interacting with it so many times, the model starts to fall apart, and you need to retune it. So they themselves were creating a tool and a software capability to be able to look at your model and make sure that if it needs retuning, it will automatically retune. No idea that this is what the limitation was of the technology. And here is an entire team that understand that problem, and their biggest challenge is going to be to go around educating people that this is a problem, you need to fix it. There's going to be quite a lot of like very senior managers in industry going, yeah, we've got that ChatGPT problem licked. We don't need to worry about it anymore. And that's what these guys have to do. Just like with my own company at Curium, we have to go around telling people sensors in cars drift. That's why it's not safe. And people are going, are you crazy? Why is that even allowed? Why would you allow them on the road? And you're like, well, don't ask me. Ask the people in power. And this is going to be the same for industry. Hey, we've got the whole ChatGPT thing. We've developed an in-house tool to do it. And they have no idea that it needs to be retuned and fine-tuned on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're just going to have a complete waste of space in less than a year. Yeah,
definitely makes sense. Yeah. So, also, can you also share about Singapore startup community and flavor of the traders these days? Is it then heading towards AI, or is it towards those Gen AI models, or is it the SaaS-based stuff?
I mean, it's a combination of both. I think there isn't a one size fits all, but there is an element of Gen AI incorporated into pretty much every tool now. Everyone's looking to address that. And like we mentioned, it's because of the amount of data that you're collecting and being able to query it and make use of it. I think that's where we're going to start to see these types of things taking the forefront. Yeah, SaaS is still a thing. It's all about scale, technology applied that can scale very quickly and generate real returns for investors. I think from an investor perspective, that's what they want to see as well. That if I'm investing in something, will it have the capability to go big? And if it does go big, can the company scale and grow with it? And can the tech scale and grow with it? I mean, we've had problems in the past where you look at some companies or some industries and you think, yeah, we can do this, but then you realize that for I think even at Blue Jeans, right, you've got the tech that can scale and grow with it, but then there's the element or the people element, and you need to hire customer success managers and technical account managers and all of that to grow with it. So even though the tech can scale, the people component doesn't necessarily scale that well either. And so I'm beginning to see people trying to use the Gen AI component to be able to handle some of those elements so that you're not just scaling the tech, you're scaling the customer interface and the customer interaction so that you can genuinely grow and scale without having to increase your operational expenditure massively. Yeah. And other things that are around the optimization of the data, making sure that, what you're able to do with your data centers and making sure that the data is in the right place. That's also some of the things that I'm beginning to see people trying to address the regulatory requirements to make sure that data doesn't egress into other countries and jurisdictions and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that's something which is, I think, one of the things that you have to take care when you are trying to use this Gen AI tools. Where is the data located and how it is utilizing your data?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, and what we've had to deal with it in the past, right? The amount of times people would say, can you prove that your data is not going out to another country? And I mean, and this is where I think education needs to come into play as well. Like educating people, like you're asking this question, but have you really thought about it? How many times did we, and Satya, you would know this, I mean, when I say we, you and me, we've fielded a question from a customer and they can say, we will not allow any of our video conferencing data to go outside of country X. And you think, well, how do you, like, I'm in Singapore, your video data is coming to me, I can record it here, and well, what are you going to do about it? Have you thought about the question you're asking? And have you really thought, is this a realistic question to present to someone and say, give me a solution for it? Because it's not solvable. You can't do that unless you actually lock it all down and say no one from outside of country X can connect into this platform. And then what's the point then? I mean, I really don't understand the point of a communication tool if you can only communicate in one location.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, have a face-to-face meeting instead.
So, Osman, I remember one small anecdote. Like you were mentioning that you met a king, right?
Yeah.
Can maybe narrate that? That's an interesting thing that we all wanted to hear.
I mean, the King of Sweden. I mean, these are just sort of the type of things that happen when you're in the ecosystem, and and we just happen to be, all of this is all serendipitous. Everything just happens. But yeah, every country is looking to leverage their best foot forward, and in this case, the Swedish business delegation had come to Singapore and wanted to do some work with both the established industry players and the startups. And you get invited to these events all the time, and and it always sounds good, like, oh yeah, the King of Sweden's going to be presenting. But yeah, we were literally like arms distance from them and from the entire delegation of the royal entourage as well. It's not unusual. I've had meetings here in Singapore with the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore. That happens more often than you'd actually want to admit to. I mean, it's one of those things. The startup ecosystem is absolutely key to the overall health of the economy. You've got the startups that are coming through. They're pulling in the talent from the universities. They're pulling in talent from abroad. They're bringing up talent from in the country, and they filter back up into the larger industries as well. Or vice versa, people who are in the larger industries want to do something in a little bit more with more autonomy, the ability to do more, and they'll want to go into a startup industry. And so, yeah, we're beginning to see more and more countries beginning to realize that this is really essential for the overall health of the economy. A bit like saying you can't have a growing population if you don't have babies. And this is kind of like the same thing. You can't have a growing economy if you don't have startups that are the babies of your economy. So in many ways, that's kind of why we get so much focus from senior ministers, senior leadership of countries coming in and wanting to encourage that type of interaction.
Got it. It's nice. Yeah, I think really great insight, Osman, and I'm really enthralled hearing all this. So, Rashmi, like anything from your side that you wanted to share on this perspective?
No, I mean, I enjoyed the chat with Orphan. I mean, the kind of stories that you shared, the anecdotes that you have been through, I mean, amazing story, amazing, amazing to learn about them all. I hope that we meet again. Actually, we meet again and have more discussions like this.
I
So,
always say to people, and I really mean it, if you're ever passing through Singapore, you should like hook me up, like give me a call, and we'll definitely catch up. Even if it is just a brief coffee chat or something like that, I always say that this is what is the highlight of being in the startup space. There's so many people passing through Singapore, and I use that opportunity to meet people all the time. And if you're ever coming this way, please let me know.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, before like reaching the last segment, any advice that you have for the upcoming startup community and the angel investment community? What are the basics or fundamentals they should be focusing on, and what are the things that they need to take care of?
I mean, I think with the recent funding winter, all of the startups have been focusing on path to profitability, and no longer should you just rely on, hey, let's go for the next funding round. I think that's going to change. I think there will be more venture capital deploying in 2025, but the idea should be, and it should have always been, that you get to a point where you're cash flow positive, that you're on the road to profitability, and you need to be always having that in mind. That's for the founder, that's for any startup player, even in deep tech, where a lot of your effort is around the R&D, the research and development. You have to keep your eye on the price. How do I monetize this? How quickly can I monetize it? You need to communicate that. And I'm speaking from a founder perspective, where I would say that we've done a really bad job ourselves of being able to do that. And so I would say learn from those mistakes that we've made ourselves, that we ourselves have not been really that good at communicating. And then for investors, I think for early stage investors like angel investors, don't let your emotions run away with you, because every founder you come across, if they're doing their job well, will give you that fear of missing out, and you'll want to and you'll say, shut up and take my money. And next thing you know, you're losing loads of money. You will lose money. I mean, that's kind of a given for angel investors. And I always say this to every single person who's come to me and said, I want to start doing angel investments. And my first question would be, do you have a balanced portfolio? And it sounds like I'm like selling insurance products. I'm not. I'm saying, do you have a house? Can you cover your mortgage? Do you have gold and silver, like a solid asset, something like that? Do you have stocks, shares, and bonds? And if your answer is no to that, then what the hell are you doing looking at angel investment? I mean, this is like the high risk, high reward aspect of your portfolio that you do with money you can afford to lose. And there are so many people who hear of the stories of angel investors making 10, 20, 30 times their return on the investment. That's great, but it was with money that they could equally lose overnight. And it's one of the few asset classes where you can go from a 1 to a 0 very quickly, just because founders had an argument overnight and said, right, I'm not doing this anymore. And they shut up shop and they're done. And as an investor, you're left with nothing. That's the only time you can really genuinely walk away with nothing is through angel investments. So I always tell people, in stocks and shares, yeah, your shares could be down 90% over a week, but there's also a chance that you still sell it for 10% and walk away with something. But with angel investments, usually it's like it's all or nothing. And so I always say it's the money that you have spare that you can afford to lose, and it's not going to change your life if you lose it. If you need to make adjustments to your way you live your life, you're overexposed, you're overextended, you shouldn't be doing it. So I always do that because I feels like I'm not. I feel like people just going gung ho, thinking that every founder they meet is going to give them a unicorn, and it's not. It's really not going to be the case. Once you've actually said, "Yeah, I've got all those things in place," and I say, "Okay, well, let's have a look. Let's have a look at what you want to invest in." And I actually say to people, depending on your risk appetite, either you do angel investing, or if you've got a large chunk of cash, talk to some of the fund managers like Accelerating Asia, for example, which I'm involved in. They manage a portfolio of 100 startups, and then you'll expect to get a return from that type of portfolio. And that is when your risk profile is where I can't afford to lose everything. Well, let me just put a chunk of cash into a fund and let them manage it and let them give me the return. And that's an easier way and a less stressful way of actually getting exposed into that. But if you don't have, let's say, $250,000, $500,000 lying around, then okay, well, K checks into a founder, but you just need to be aware that there's so many of them out there that you need to curate it. You need to be very diligent and never. And when I said earlier on, like, don't let your emotions run away. Believe me, you might feel that you've missed out on an opportunity, and that does happen. But you can also, like, where there's one founder coming to you with a great idea, there's another 10 in the queue waiting to present the next opportunity to you. And so you shouldn't feel like this is my only opportunity to get in on the ground level of a great startup. So yeah, I mean that's kind of my advice to new angel investors, to really keep your emotions in check, apply due diligence, and look at the demo days. Go to, like, I always invite people to attend a demo day from an accelerator program. That's the opportunity where like a seasoned investor, like a venture fund or an accelerator program, has curated the startups for you. So you're not just randomly responding to a LinkedIn request to say, hey, I've got a great opportunity for you. These are companies that have really gone through a particular program. They've been curated. Still a high chance of failure, but in this case, they high chance of failure is mitigated somewhat because you don't get through those programs just by bluff and, I hate to say it, but bluff and bravado. It's more to do with, the economic fundamentals of the business, how you scale and grow, and somebody has already done that due diligence for you.
Yeah, right. I think the accelerators and all, they have the good, the first filters, and they provide the really curated set of business deals, or that's are promising and probably where we can actually have a look.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think founders would also need to think about how to get into these accelerators in a way so that they can also prove their metal and probably go to the next funding.
yeah. I mean, and that's exactly what we do at Accelerating Asia. We see like 800 applications on average per cohort, and we run 2 cohorts a year, and we only select 10. Right. So imagine that's like the acceptance rate is really, really, really low. Right. So we're already filtering it down to 10. And then we have some angel investors going, I'm doing so much due diligence on this one startup. And you're thinking, we've looked at 800 and we've given you 10 and you've picked one. And you're telling me that you're doing a lot of due diligence on your own. I mean, the concept of due diligence is different for everyone, but what you don't see is the actual amount of effort, heavy lifting that's done to get through that. I mean, Satya, you went through the venture fundamentals course with Jed. I mean, he sees so many startups and he does so much heavy lifting to try and get to a point where he goes, okay, I'm going to invest in this one. And then he does all the heavy lifting to actually get that deal across the line. But what most people don't see is all the work that's gone before that to kind of get it down to that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. I think great insights, Osman. We are reaching to the end of the segment, but it has been a really phenomenal discussion. A lot of great insights. And the unique thing about you, you are on the both sides. You are a founder yourself as well as an angel investor. So you can speak from both the sides of the journey, and you can tell how things are at the side of the fence. So amazing, Osman. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the show and really sharing great insights. We will be in touch and we will have more further discussions coming on in future also.
Yeah.
Great.
Great to you. I hope that we talk more in the coming days. I think Satya was saying that you also have a few founders in this space who are, so any founder in the space actually who has been using AI tools, would love to talk to them.
Cool.
Objective is to learn, right? I mean, as you, learning from them, and then also promoting them into different platforms that we are building out here.
Okay, yeah, sure.
In this podcast, we will be sharing your LinkedIn profile also. So people who want to reach out to you, they can reach out to you. And if they're passing through Singapore, they can drop in and say hi to you also.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like the highlight of my day when somebody tells me that they're coming through and do I want to meet up? And usually the answer is yes. The only reason why I don't sometimes is because I just don't have enough time in the day. But more than happy to do that.
Sure. So thank you. Thank you. I think we'll meet again.
All right, cool.
Have a good one, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning on to the Founder Stories podcast. Today, we hope today's session with our incredible guest was interesting and inspiring. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and leave a review and share it with the network. Stay tuned as we continue to bring the stories of more extraordinary founders, explore their groundbreaking strategies, and showcase the latest AI tools and innovations that are shaping the future. Until next time, keep dreaming big and turning challenges into opportunities. See you in the next episode. Bye.